All right. It's very special to have our monthly shir and breakfast. This shir is sponsored by Marshall and Rivka Zakai Marcus, Luli Nishmas, Marshall's father, Ben Zion Ben Zev Wolf. His neshama should have an aliyah. And Marshall has certainly added to the Torah fabric of West Hempstead. So I'm certain that he's giving nachas to his father. Next Shabbos, which is Erev Tisha B'Av, let's discuss some important halachos going from Shabbos to Tisha B'Av, has an overarching principle that we do not express avelos b'farhesia on Shabbos. We don't express public mourning on Shabbos. This is the case if Chalila, someone is sitting Shiva, then we do not have any public expressions of avelos on Shabbos. Nonetheless, and we'll get back to that in a minute, there is a shita, the Ramah brings it down, Tov Kof Nun Aleph, Sif Aleph over there, that we're not machlef to Big Day Shabbos, we don't wear Shabbos clothes. He says just change, according to the Taz, your undershirt for Shabbos, the Big Day Zayah, but otherwise you don't wear Shabbos clothes. Now, if you look in the Mishabur, we don't paskin like this. We do wear Shabbos clothes next week, but I want you to keep that in mind. The big discussion next week is the Mechaber in Tov Kof Nun Beis famously says that if Tisha B'Av falls on a Sunday, Ochel Basar V'Shos Hayayim B'Suda Mafsekes, you could eat meat and drink wine at a Suda Mafsekes, Umal Al Shulchano Afidas Kfilu Kesuda Shalom Melech B'Shaito, and you're allowed to have a Suda, your Shalshudas next week after we daven Mincha at 6 o'clock, could even be like the feast of Shlomo. How many animals did Shlomo slaughter in one of his feasts? 1,000. That means you could have an incredible feast next Shabbos as Shabbos is going in. Ramah points out you could be so interested and excited about your Suda that you made for Shabbos. You have to stop before Shabbos before Shabbos is over. You have to stop before Shkia. Now, just a minute here. However, Izazai, first of all, we have to point out, because it's good to know, the prohibition of not eating meat and drinking wine during the 9 days is different fundamentally than that during Aninos Chalila, when a person loses one of the 7 krov. The reason we do not eat meat and drink wine during the 9 days is mitam avelos on the Beis HaMikdash, because meat and wine were fundamental to karbanos. The Gemara has an entire discussion. Certain Tanoim wanted to say we shouldn't have bread because of lach la'aponim. We shouldn't have salt because it was on karbanos, and eventually said you can't have water because it was in Nisuch HaMayim. It's not possible to function like this after the Churban. But at least let's restrict ourselves from meat and wine during the 9 days. Now, when a person is an einain, that he lost one of the close relatives, and the reason why he doesn't eat meat and drink wine is because it's not covered amaze. You're sitting around and having a glass of Cabernet and a steak when your relative is not buried yet, that's not covered amaze. In fact, after a relative is buried, one's allowed to drink wine during Shiva. The Gemara in Ksubas, I believe it's... Do you know what daf it's on? I believe it's around Daf Yud on the base of the bottom over there. The Gemara says they in fact used to give 10 cups of wine to Avelim to dull their pain, and then they stopped it because it was turning into what today is by another group of ethnicity where they have a wake and people get intoxicated after they lose a close relative. So, nonetheless, there's no prohibition. Now, interestingly enough, some Achronim believe, that the Erev Pesach has a status of Meso Mutal Lefanav. It has a status as if someone's deceased is lying there unburied. Erev Tisha B'Av, I'm sorry. Erev Tisha B'Av. I apologize. Erev Tisha B'Av. Nonetheless, the reason we don't eat meat and drink wine is because of this idea of Avelos on the Beis HaMikdash. Initially, it was only restricted to Erev Tisha B'Av itself, and we've extended that to the entire 9 days. Midina de Gemara, it applies to the meal before Tisha B'Av. So there's a big machlokas over here. The Tur brings down from the Avi Ezri that you're not supposed to eat meat and drink wine at the Sudam Apsekes this Shabbos. However, he says that's not appropriate because someone who stops from eating meat and drinking wine, it will be like they're expressing Avelis in public. And therefore the Tur says that he saw by his father the rush. Not that he's saying that's what he paskins. He saw at his father's table that they served meat and wine on Erev Tisha B'Av, that was a Shabbos. The Magen Avraham points out that Lamaisa, you shouldn't have a big party by Shalosh Shudas. Hagam, if you would refrain from eating meat and drinking wine, that would be a problem. You're expressing Avelus B'far Hesya. And in fact, there's an obligation to eat meat and drink wine. If you normally don't have a large Shalosh Shudas, it would be inappropriate to have a Sudas Chaverim, a very large Shalosh Shudas. That's how the Magen Avraham paskins. Just the normal people in your house. Now, on a practical level, and this has happened to me, if there are people in town that need a Suda, they're traveling, or they're going to be alone, then Avada inviting them is not part of Sudas Mereim. It's Pasha Chesed, they need a meal before the fast. This is unlike Aninos. By Aninos, we paskin if you want, Chas v'shalom, if someone is an onein over Shabbos and you desire not to eat meat and drink wine, you can, because it's not because of Avelos. It's because it's not covered ames. That would apply on Shabbos also. But now, on Erev Tisha B'Av, it's because of Avelos. If you stop because it's Erev Tisha B'Av, then you're expressing Avelos B'far Hesya. So the obvious question is, what is the difference between that and the Ramah saying that we don't wear Big Day Shabbos? So this is a conundrum. This is a puzzle. Why in one do we say that it's Avelos B'far Hesya, you can't do it? And the other we say, no, there's some shitas that you shouldn't wear Big Day Shabbos. In fact, even today, people say you shouldn't wear all of your Shabbos clothing. Wear one thing that's not Beged Shabbos, like wear a vach hat. So what's no, we wear Shabbos clothing, but we wear a vach hat. But the Ramah says you don't wear Shabbos clothing. So what's the difference? So our Shulchan has it. One second here. The Shulchan. Weekday hat. First you need to get hat number one, then we can worry about hat number two. Okay. So what's the difference? So the Shulchan has an interesting thing, a historical reality. He said back in the day, many people, poor people, did not really have Big Day Shabbos that looked all that much different from their weekday clothing. And therefore, the only difference between Shabbos clothing and weekday clothing was maybe it was a little newer, maybe you paid a little more money for it, but fundamentally people didn't have weekday clothing like we're all wearing now. And then on Shabbos, a pressed shirt and a pressed pants, maybe a suit, maybe a tie. They didn't do that in those days. And for that reason, it wasn't considered an expression of Avelos B'far Hesya, even someone who had special Shabbos clothing, if they did wear Shabbos clothing. Because there are other people that anyways were not wearing Shabbos clothing. Nobody would notice it. So no one noticed it besides for them. So it's not public mourning. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, today is different. Today, Baruch Hashem, we all have Shabbos clothing. In those days, people tell over, right? When a kid was bar mitzvah, they take the younger kid's suit, they turn it inside out, sew it up a little bit, and give it to a kid. Now, even an ani gets a new suit for his bar mitzvah. If you would hear of a kid who didn't get a new suit for his bar mitzvah, you'd think Pasha's parents are abusing him, something crazy is going on, right? But it used to be different. So therefore, today, he says, Ena chinami, it would be Avelos B'far Hesya. Let's discuss another shiloh, which is a lot of people like to take pills for the fast. Somehow it makes them that they have an easier fast. Now, especially if they're addicted to caffeine. Now, there's a Pashat Eitzah for that. We're discussing this at our Shabbos table. First of all, you could just take coffee grinds, and you can mix them with a little something, and you could consume them. That's not derech achila. And if you want to be a little frummer, take a little bit of water, put soap into it, mix coffee with the water and the soap. It's Pashat Mos, Petachlas Hamiyos, and then you could consume that on Tisha B'Av itself, right? It's not royal achila. It's not edible. It's disgusting. You're making a face. It's disgusting. Okay, so people that don't want to do that, they're a little frummer. So they want to have pills. The problem is we're not allowed to have pills on Shabbos. Okay, there's a gzeira not to take medicine on Shabbos lest you come to grind herbs. Herb medicines in those days were made with herbs, not something they made in a laboratory. And therefore, there was a gzera of shchika samanim. Unless someone has the status of a chole she'ein bo sakana. A chole she'ein bo sakana, people get this confused. It means someone whose life is not in danger, but nonetheless, they're very seriously ill. Otherwise, you can't take medicine. The mashal, what we say is michosh ba'alma, epis, you have the sniffles, you're not allowed to take medicine on Shabbos. So these pills, it's discussed, right, in halacha, so what do we do about it? In Reish Kafez, so what do we do? Reish Nun Beis, I'm sorry, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? This for Tisha. So some people take them on Erev Tisha B'Av, and then they last for Tisha B'Av. They're delayed release.
The question we're discussing is
taking them. It doesn't make a difference.
Tisha B'Av on Tisha B'Av, you can take a pill, can you, or no?
Shh. Tisha B'Av on Tisha B'Av, you can take a pill on Tisha B'Av on Sunday. But there are people that like to take them before Tisha B'Av, and they're delayed release.
First of all, you're doing that. You're preparing on Shabbos to Sunday.
So no, you're allowed to do. 1 second. Slow down. Everybody, slow down. So 1/8 says to take it Saturday night, but the question is, can you take it on Shabbos? So first of all, it's not called preparing for Shabbos for a very simple reason. Any activity that a person would normally do for that day, even if they're doing it for another day, as long as they don't specify that they're doing it for the next day, it's not a problem of achana, l'moshel sleeping or eating or something like that. So l'maisa, how do you take a pill on Shabbos? So there's an eitzah that a lot of poskim give. The Gros Moshe and Chelik Beis does not hold to this eitzah, and that is that on Friday, grind the pill up and mix it with food, and then take the food on Shabbos. So therefore, I'm not taking the pill on Shabbos, I'm taking the food. Obviously, you're allowed to eat on Shabbos. This is based on a Gemara, different interpretations of the Gemara. Again, I want to point out Rav Moshe doesn't hold of it, but nonetheless, Rav Moshe holds that Gemara is only talking about when the medicine is normally mixed with food. But if the medicine is not normally mixed with food, nonetheless, you're taking medicine on Shabbos. But Rav Shlomo Zalman and other shitas in Shmir Shabbos hold that since it's not observable that you're taking medicine on Shabbos, b'chagonda, Chazal never made a gzera. They never made such a gzera. Let's discuss learning Torah on Shabbos. So there's an apocryphal story. I don't know if it's true. They came once to the Chavetz Chaim and they said to the Chavetz Chaim, when are you supposed to stop learning on Erev Tisha B'Av? So the story goes that the Chavetz Chaim said to him, you learn and we'll tell you when to stop. L'maisa, what is the halacha of learning this year on Erev Tisha B'Av? We have the practice of not learning on Erev Tisha B'Av. The halacha says that he would have instituted you could learn on Tisha B'Av if he realized, if we see what's going on, that people Nebuch on Tisha B'Av are doing all sorts of frivolous activities, better they should still be learning. The whole reason you don't learn when a person is in Avelus or on Tisha B'Av, is shlo yasiach daito min ha'avelus. Torah is considered misamech, it's meshivas nafesh, and if a person, chas v'shalom, is learning Torah, they may remove themselves from the avelus. If a person anyways is going to be mesiach das from the avelus by doing all sorts of activities, spending 3 hours on Tisha B'Av afternoon getting the perfect bagel, lox, and cream cheese for the breakfast, then enoch hinami, maybe they should sit and learn. Okay, but we're not going to take away the minhag Chazal, which is not to learn. What about on Erev Tisha B'Av? So, for sure, there's no question. It says in halacha, those things that are your normal seder alimud, you're definitely allowed to learn. Nonetheless, the Ramah seems to exclude that. He seems to say that Perkei Avos you shouldn't learn. The Mishabrura and the Be'er Halacha does not say that. He says, why not? He says a couple of reasons. First of all, he says, even Talmidei Chachamim have a problem on Tisha B'Av. Tell them they can learn Yirmiyahu. Tell them they can learn Eicha. Tell them they can learn the Gemara and Gittin and Vav. It talks about the Churban. He says, Ein adam lomed ela mashli bo chafetz. Says the Be'er Halacha, a person learns what he desires. And even Talmidei Chacham, he says, I saw were misrashel, were lazy, when they couldn't learn what they normally learn. And therefore, he paskins be'erev Tisha B'Av yesh lahakel, especially when Erev Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbos. There's a tremendous place to be mekel this year to learn up until Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av itself, Hagam, you have the same logic. A person is only not supposed to learn if he's going to be focused on the Avelis. Okay, but since we have the Kor Halacha, we never take away the Kor Halacha. But Lamaisa, Lev Yadua this year, especially according to Be'er Halacha, there's tremendous leniency. I know the Ramah says otherwise, but the Mishabur, the Halacha passes tremendous leniency to learn all the way until Shabbos, until Shabbos is over. Now, if you look,
that's the end of Shabbos.
it's Shkia, presumably. Now, what happens at Shkia? The halacha is at Shkia, those parts of the fast that are not observable and Avelis, we accept upon ourselves. So we don't eat, we don't drink. Learning would be another one of them. Anything that's observable. Washing would be another one. What about those parts of Avelis that are observable, like sitting on the ground or taking off the shoes? That we don't do. We don't do that like this. If you look in the Ramah says that you wait until Motzei Shabbos, and we take them off after Baruch Hu. The Chazan takes them off Kodem Baruch Hu. That's what the Ramah says. There's some Shitos that believe that this applies even today with what we do. What do we do that's so different today? Today, we're not in shul in almost everywhere as Tisha B'Av is coming in. Rather, we're home. We're going to wait till after the Zman, and then we're going to come to shul. So there are tshuvos that believe that regarding Tosfos Shabbos, the addition to Shabbos, which is after Shabbos, you're allowed to do everything that doesn't express Avelos B'far, that expresses Avelos B'far Hesya. In other words, you can't eat and drink, but you don't need to sit on the ground. You don't need to take off your Shabbos clothing as long as you're in Tosfos Shabbos, even if you extend it into Tisha B'Av. L'maisa, we don't paskin like that. We paskin on a practical level. Once it's seis, once Shabbos goes out, you have to say, and this is very important to remember, you have to say, Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'chol. Blessed is he who separates between that which is sacred and that which is profane. You could say it in English too if you want, but you got to say it. It's Havdalah, you have to understand it. It's Das. And then you take off your Shabbos clothes, you take off your shoes, and you come to shul in your weekday clothes. That's practically what we do today. But Leve Yadua, it's to know, just time for learning, that there's a concept, there's a shitos, that hold that Tosfos Shabbos allows us to extend the Kedusha of Shabbos even to the point of wearing our Shabbos clothes, even until Tisha B'Av. That's how powerful Tosfos Shabbos is.
You don't have to change your clothes, just your shoes.
No, you need to change your Shabbos clothes, take them off.
Really? When you come to shul,
You want for Eichel and Motzei Shabbos, you want us to take off our big day Shabbos?
I mean, it's not Dov Greer that wants it, but yes. If you look in the Ramah, if you look in the Ramah,
We're going to talk about after this month.
yes, we always daven after Zman, yes. If you look,
No.
no, you don't make up. I'm going to get that in a minute. Can I talk about that in a second? In Tuf Kuf Nun Aleph at the beginning, it's clear that you're not supposed to wear big day Shabbos except on Shabbos. L'kuli alma. That's why they have a heter if you're a moel, or if you're a sandak, or if you're a kvater and you're a woman, or if you're a baal bris. Otherwise, there's no heter. If you go to a bris, last year we had the opportunity to go to a pidyon haben of a member of the Kehila here, the extended Kehila here, on Erev Tisha B'Av. I took my boys, I think. Yeah, you came with me. To a pidyon haben. So obviously, what? You went. It was very geshmak. So again, you do that before Chatzos, ideally. But Lamaisa, you don't wear big day Shabbos. Just the Baal Simcha. The rest of us didn't wear big day Shabbos. It's Erev Tisha B'Av. Again, we had a very beautiful Suda. So we do not wear big day Shabbos on Tisha B'Av. Okay? This is what's Shtein Halacha. Again, as I mentioned before, there are Shitos HaAchronim that as long as you extend Shabbos, the problem with that is that once you say Baruch Hu, your extension of Shabbos is over. Okay? Now let's discuss Havdalah. So Havdalah we make, which is two blessings. Havagofen and Hamavdil. Let's discuss the Chatchila and then we'll discuss everything else, and with that we'll conclude. We'll say a quick vart and we'll conclude. We say Havdalah on Motzei Tisha B'Av, Rabbosai. Sunday night. At that point, you drink the wine yourself. There's no need to give it to a tinok. There's no need to give it to a child. According to Kuli Alma, you don't need to give it to a child. Just drink the wine yourself. Even though we don't drink wine, eat meat until Chatzais, the day after Tisha B'Av, Klape Havdalah, they're making Lagamre after Tisha B'Av's over. On Motzei Shabbos, you either say Atoch Hanantanu in Shul, but those of us that are going to be doing Melacha before we come to shul, we're going to be driving to shul, we're going to be taking off our big day Shabbos, say Baruch Hamavdil before you do so. A woman who does not go to shul has to say Baruch Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol on Motzei Shabbos. Let's say it's a chiyuv. Let's discuss the next thing, which is ner. What about the candle? So in shul, we're going to make a bracha on ner. What should a woman do at home? Now, this is a big discussion in halacha. The ideal would be that every man would not be yotzei with a berchas haner in shul and would go make haner for their wife at home and they'd fulfill all shitos. L'maisa, we don't tell people to do that.
Why are we making Havdalah in shul on Sunday night? We don't usually make Havdalah.
We're not.
It's Shabbos night.
See, what's a Shabbos make Havdalah?
No, Eish.
Just Eish.
Just Eish.
Just Eish.
Just Eish.
Just Eish Motzei Shabbos.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So ideally, mitam halacha, to avoid all the shitos, a man should not have kavanah to be yotzei with Eish and go make for their wife at home when they come home from shul. You could do that before you do it. You could do that before you go. 100%. You could do it before you go.
So you just light a candle and then you put it out.
That's all you do. Everything else you do by Havdalah. The putting it out in the wine, and some people light 2 candles. Those are all gorgeous minhagim, have nothing to do with Motzei Shabbos going into Tisha. Okay? There's no besam this week. That would be the ideal. We're not telling people to do that.
But if we're
So-
anyway starting marriage later, we should do that, no?
Again, if you're anyway starting marriage later, you should do that, correct?
Light a candle.
But to have a whole bunch of people not be yotzei in shul, that would be, as Rav Kelmer Zatzal said, a milsa detzmiel arabim, something that's shocking for the masses. We don't engage in those practices, even sometimes if they're a little technically proper. Nonetheless, 100%. If you're coming to shul later, the best approach is to light a candle, make a bar mera'ish for your wife, put the candle out, and go to shul. Obviously, say Baruch Hamavdil. That's the best approach. The best approach. What happens if that doesn't happen? So you go to shul and you're yotzei a birch saner. What should your wife do? So it's very important. It's a good makom to review the halacha of Havdalah. There's a machlokes in Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch's first daya in Hilchos Havdalah, Mechaber, is that women are chayiv in Havdalah just like a man. Why? We know that a woman is chayiv in Kiddush just like a man, Zochar v'Shamar, and the Rambam seems to imply mitzvah b'chnisaso v'yitziaso. Then the Shulchan Aruch brings a second shita. No, that's not true. That since Havdalah occurs after Shabbos is over, it's not part of Zochar Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho, and it's a regular positive commandment that's time-bound, and in which case, a woman would not be chayiv in it at all. Comes along the Bach and says, except for our Sephardi brethren, we paskin Ashkenazic jury paskins that any positive commandment, a woman is allowed to be mamshich the chiyuv on herself. For example, lulav and esrog, or it's kia shayfer. By us, we say a brach on them. So he says a woman could be mamshich the chiyuv of Havdalah on herself by the same token and make Havdalah. Now, it's a very interesting comparison, and you can make a chiluk. The chiluk you can make, it's not brought down in the Bar Halacha, the chiluk you can make is that when you accept upon yourself a mitzvah, then the bracha comes because of it. But if the bracha is the whole mitzvah, what exactly are you accepting upon yourself? And then we say you can make a bracha. A good kasha. Lamaisa, we paskin a woman makes Havdalah, and Lamaisa, the Mishabura says that the day of Rishona is Ikar. We pass like the first shita that it's quite likely midoraisa, and a woman absolutely makes Havdalah. Yes, the Magen Avram says that a woman should not drink from the Havdalah wine. Yes, in mythology, somehow she'll grow a beard. It's a stickle of a shtus, but okay. The reason why the woman shouldn't drink from the Havdalah wine, I believe where the source comes from, which is a fascinating thing to think about, is because one of the shitos of the Eitz Hadas was that it was geffen, and let's face it, who caused us all this trouble we have? The woman. So for her to drink from that geffen on Motzei Shabbos, right? Adam Arishon left Gan Eden on Motzei Shabbos, oy va'avai. So that she shouldn't do it. But halacha l'maisa, if there's no one around, she should drink it. What about ner? Ner is different. Why do we make a bracha on ner on Motzei Shabbos, right? Because that's when to remember to be makir the nes, that Hashem gave us the ability to make fire on Motzei Shabbos. In fact, there's a shita brought down in the Motzei Kalim of the tour that if you don't have fire, you could pick up a clod of earth, rigve adama, and say the bracha borei mara'ish on the clod of earth. Because Adam Harishon was shown how to take two clods of earth, rub them together. You know, all kids love to do this when they hike, and it never works. Adam Harishon knew what he was doing. Okay, and all of a sudden get a spark, and they light a fire. Okay, halach, right? So therefore, it's really a mitzvah sasei shazman grama. It's a positive time-related mitzvah that they tacked on to Havdalah. So some people say women should not make borei mara'ish. I saw in Kovetz Halachos, Shmuel Kamenetsky says that yes, a woman should. We passed them they should go according to the approaches that she could, because part of Havdalah, and they were misakin that she could do it. Maybe she could also accept upon herself. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. What about a sick person that has to make Havdalah? So this is very important to understand. If a sick person has to eat on Tisha B'Av, they must make Havdalah beforehand. And we paskin, even a woman, we paskin it's potentially midoraisa. They have to make Havdalah beforehand. What is their Havdalah? The bracha and hamavdil. What do they make it on? So this is a big discussion. It's preferable on Tisha B'Av not to make it on wine or grape juice. Even though we're lenient during the 9 days and even Shavuot Shechalbo, it's preferable on Tisha B'Av to avoid it. If there's no choice, then make it on that. If there's a tinok, give it to the child to drink between the ages of 6 and 11. If there's no child, the woman drinks herself without a shaila. But it's preferable to avoid it. She should make it on Chamar Medina. The question is, what is Chamar Medina? The Igros Moshe in Chelik Beis says that the definition of Chamar Medina is something that a person doesn't only drink for thirst. So he excludes soda because he believes that Coca-Cola you mainly drink for thirst. It's not something you put on a table. Now, the truth is he excludes milk also because milk in those days people didn't drink. I'm not so sure that applies today. Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky says you could drink, milk can be used for Havdalah. Look, we have chocolate milk on the table here. Chocolate milk people drink as a b'chavadik drink. What about orange juice? That's an interesting question. Certainly, I would not use concentrated orange juice because that's water. But authentic orange juice, potentially you can make. You could also make it on coffee because Hagam coffee is primarily water, but it's a drink that's made with water. Hagam, there's a problem with coffee. That you have to drink a malo lugma. If it's burning hot, you can't do that. Now, it's interesting. A lot of poskim say iced coffee is just drunk for thirst. I don't think that's true today. I think people drink when they're spending $10 on some foolish iced coffee, as they, you know, as the young Arnoshim Tzidkanyo says, they're in Shidduchim to marry someone who's going to, you know, they're going to sit and learn. They're going to be mistaken from what shine. Okay, Lamaisa, you can make it on ice. You can make it on iced coffee or milk, and it's very important that people who have wives who Baruch Hashem are in a stage in life where they have to eat on Tisha B'Av, if they can no longer function without eating, then they must make Havdalah first. They must make Havdalah first, and they have to make it. It's 2 brachas. You make a bracha on the shahakol. If it's at night, you make ner. L'chol hadeos, we do not make the bracha of ner on Sunday. Not men, not women, not no one. There's obviously no besamim. You don't make besamim. Rather, you just make a bracha and hamavdil. It's important to keep that in mind. I just want to end off with.
We lose the besamim. You lose the besamim this year.
Correct. I just want to end off with one point. Lamaisa in the Gemara in Tainus mentions that historically Tisha B'Av was destroyed, both the first Beis HaMikdash and the second Beis HaMikdash on a Motzei Shabbos. In fact, the Gemara tells us what mishmar of Kayanim were serving in the Beis HaMikdash, then Simchi, and it says the mishmar of Yehoyariv. It's very interesting. That was obviously only during the second Beis HaMikdash. We don't know what was during the first Beis HaMikdash, to the best of my knowledge. But there is a connection between Tisha B'Av and Motzei Shabbos. The reason we make a bracha on Ner on Motzei Shabbos is because Adam Arishon was given the news that he was going to leave Gan Eden on Friday afternoon. That's when he sinned. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I'm going to wait to effect the judgment until Motzei Shabbos. And Motzei Shabbos is when he left Gan Eden, and Olam Choshech Ba'ado, this line in the Pirkei Rabbi, the world was dark. And he waited until HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, Hagam, the world is very dark. I'm going to show you how to light a candle in that very dark world. I'm going to show you how that you could still have a candle in the dark world. And that's why I make a bracha, Borei Mara'ish, on Motzei Shabbos. It's a hakara of that nace that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed us the concept of a fire. We could heat ourselves. In Gan Eden, everything was temperature control. There was no such thing as a person being cold or being hot or being uncomfortable or not too much darkness, not too much light. It was all perfect. It was all perfect. And we were there dedicated just to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the reality is that the Beis HaMikdash had that aspect. It was another place in this world where HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shechina can meet a Ben Adam, can meet a human. Very similar to the scenario in Gan Eden. In fact, my Rebbe Yitzchak Berkowitz used to say the concept of v'achlu osam asher kupar b'hem konim ochlim b'aylam eskaprim, when the konim used to eat from the karban chatas, and that would effectuate a kapara for Klal Yisrael, whoever brought the karban chatas. That was an idea that entire achila was completely spiritual in nature, right? That's how it was in Gan Eden. That even the physical side of us was able to be totally channeled for spirituality. Now in this world, we try, we attempt, it's a struggle, right? But over there, it was simple in a certain sense, right? And Adam Rishon lost that after he sinned. And in a certain sense, a lot of that was lost after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. And we have to struggle to regain that now that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. There's a fascinating thing, that there are 5 days a year that you're supposed to get up and daven vasikin. And the Elia Rabbah,
Sorry, too, but they like this.
No.
the Elia Rabbah says that the acronym of Avraham lists those 5 days. Okay, it doesn't work. The acronym, you need a little bit of action involved with, but Aleph is referring to Chodesh Av, the Beis is Rosh Hashanah, Breishis, Briat Ha'olam, the Reish referring to Yom Kippur, the Tzoma Rabbah, the Hey refers to Hoshana Rabbah, the Mem refers to Purim, Megillah. Those are 5 days a year. So, but the one that's hardest to understand is Tisha B'Av. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Hoshana Rabbah, we understand. Purim, it's also a Yom Tefillah, it's a Yom Tshuva like Yom Kippur. Tisha B'Av is the perplexing one to understand. Right? What are you doing? You're getting up to meet Hashem early. It's like that candle that Adam Rishon was shown. That after the Churban Abayis, we appreciate that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a mahalach, and that together with the genius of Chazal, that even with the Olam Chashach of the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, through the Beis Knesset and through other ways, we have an ability, so to speak, to light that candle. And I think that's a very beautiful connection between Motzei Shabbos, Tisha B'Av on Motzei Shabbos, when the Beis HaMikdash was actually destroyed, and the whole concept of what Motzei Shabbos is. I wish everybody a inspiring and meaningful Tisha B'Av, and of course the fast should be as easy as possible. Everybody should have a wonderful day.